Welcome to the Daily History Chronicle. Each day, we travel back to discover a pivotal moment that changed the world. These aren't just dates and facts. They're stories of courage, conflict, innovation, and consequence that still echo through our lives today. Are you ready to explore? Let's see what happened on this day in history.
This is the Daily History Chronicle, where we explore the moments that shaped our world and discover why they still matter today. I'm Richard Backus, publisher of University Teaching Edition, and every day I get to share a piece of history that I think you'll find as fascinating as I do. On February 6, 1840, more than 40 Maori chiefs signed a treaty with the British Crown at Waitangi, a settlement in New Zealand's Bay of Islands. It was supposed to be a partnership. Britain would provide governance and protection, and the Maori would retain their lands and authority. Within 5 years, they were at war. Within decades, the Maori had lost most of their land. And to this day, New Zealanders are still arguing about what that treaty actually meant. Here's what fascinates me about this moment. Nobody was trying to commit fraud. The British officials weren't scheming to steal a country through legal trickery. The Maori chiefs weren't naive primitives who didn't understand what they were signing. Both sides believed they were making a reasonable deal. And yet the two versions of the treaty, one in English, one in Maori, said fundamentally different things. The consequences of that overnight translation are still being sorted out 185 years later. Picture this: the lawn of the British residence house at Waitangi, February 5, 1840. Hundreds of Maori chiefs have gathered. Some have traveled considerable distances. A British naval captain named William Hobson stands before them, asking them to sign a document that will change everything. Hobson had arrived in New Zealand just weeks earlier, carrying instructions from the Colonial Office to negotiate a treaty with the Maori. The British government had finally decided to act. European settlers were arriving in growing numbers: whalers, traders, missionaries, land speculators. The New Zealand Company was actively recruiting colonists from Britain and buying up land. Some of those land deals were legitimate. Many were not. Settlers were behaving badly, and some Maori chiefs had actually petitioned the British Crown for help. There was also the matter of the French. A French naval expedition was reportedly on its way, and French Catholic missionaries were already active in New Zealand. If Britain didn't establish sovereignty, France might. The Colonial Office in London, which had resisted taking on another colony, finally concluded that intervention was necessary. There was also an earlier document complicating matters. In 1835, British resident James Busby had gathered a group of northern chiefs to sign a Declaration of Independence, which stated that sovereign power resided in the hereditary chiefs and that Britain would protect their independent state. Having recognized Maori sovereignty in 1835, Britain could not simply claim New Zealand by right of discovery. They needed Maori consent. So Hobson came to make a deal. The problem was he came with almost nothing. No prepared treaty text, no legal advisors, no clear instructions on specifics. He had to write the treaty himself with help from his secretary, James Freeman, and the British resident, James Busby. Neither of them was a lawyer. The document they produced had 3 articles. In English, the first article stated that the Maori chiefs ceded all the rights and powers of sovereignty to Queen Victoria. The second guaranteed the chiefs full, exclusive, and undisturbed possession of their lands, forests, fisheries, and other properties, while granting the Crown exclusive right to purchase any land they wished to sell. The third gave Maori all the rights and privileges of British subjects. It seemed straightforward enough: sovereignty to Britain, property rights protected, equal citizenship. But the treaty had to be translated into Maori, and this is where everything went sideways. The translation was done overnight on February 4th by missionary Henry Williams and his son Edward. They worked by candlelight, racing to have something ready for the assembly the next morning. Williams was fluent in Maori, but fluency doesn't solve every problem. Some concepts simply don't translate. The word sovereignty had no equivalent in the Maori language. Williams chose Kawanatanga, a transliteration of governance. Maori knew this word from the Bible, where it described figures like Pontius Pilate. They also knew it from references to the governor of New South Wales, a distant British official who had limited authority over New Zealand affairs. Kawanatanga suggested administrative power, not absolute dominion. Meanwhile, Article 2 guaranteed the chiefs Te Tino Rangatiratanga, their full chiefly authority, over their lands, and Taonga, their treasures. This was a powerful term. Rangatiratanga meant the authority that chiefs had always exercised over their people and territories. It implied far more than property ownership. So in English, the chiefs surrendered sovereignty and retained property rights. In Maori, they granted governance while retaining their own authority. These are not the same thing. They may, in fact, be contradictory. On February 5th, the chiefs debated all day and into the night. The discussion was vigorous. Some supported the treaty, others were deeply skeptical. A chief named Rewa, who lived near the British settlement at Kororareka, told the assembly that Maori did not need a governor. "This country is ours," he said. "We are the governor, we, the chiefs of this, our father's land." Another chief, Moka, warned that signing would lead to domination. "The governor will take away our land." But others saw benefits. British law might restrain the worst behavior of European settlers. British protection might deter French ambitions. And Hobson and the missionaries emphasized that chiefly authority would be preserved. That night, the chiefs gathered at Teiti near the Waitangi River to make their decision. The next morning, February 6th, the signing began. Hone Heka, a young and influential chief, signed first. More than 40 others followed that day. Some drew their moko, their traditional facial tattoos, as their signatures. Over the following months, copies of the treaty were carried throughout New Zealand. By September, more than 500 chiefs had signed. Nearly all of them signed the Maori text. Only 39 signed the English version. The British, however, proceeded as though the English version were authoritative. The trouble started almost immediately. The British established their capital, first at Kororareka and then at Auckland, and began exercising authority in ways the chiefs hadn't anticipated. Land was at the center of almost every conflict. The Crown's exclusive right to purchase land, meant to protect Maori from unscrupulous speculators, became a bottleneck that frustrated everyone. The colonial government bought land cheaply from Maori and resold it to settlers at substantial profit. Settlers were frustrated by the scarcity of available land. Maori were frustrated by the low prices, the slow pace of government purchases, and the steady loss of their territory. The population dynamics were shifting rapidly. In 1840, there were perhaps 125,000 Maori and only 2,000 Europeans in New Zealand. By 1858, the European population had grown to around 59,000 and was climbing fast. Settlers wanted land, and the government was under constant pressure to provide it. Within 5 years of the treaty signing, war had broken out. Hone Heka, the first chief to sign the treaty, became so disillusioned that he chopped down the British flagpole at Kororareka, not once but 4 times. The flagpole had originally flown the flag of the United Tribes of New Zealand, symbolizing Maori independence. Now it flew the Union Jack, and Heki saw it as a symbol of broken promises. The fourth time, in March 1845, Hek didn't just cut down the pole. He and his ally, the war chief Kawiti, attacked the settlement itself, driving out the European residents. The New Zealand Wars had begun. The conflicts would continue, off and on, for more than 2 decades. In the 1860s, fighting intensified when the government moved to confiscate land in the Waikato region. Thousands of British troops fought against Maori forces who, despite being vastly outnumbered and outgunned, proved formidable opponents, building sophisticated defensive fortifications called PA that frustrated British military tactics. By the time the wars ended in the 1870s, Maori had lost millions of acres through confiscation, forced sales, and legal mechanisms that the treaty was supposed to prevent. The Native Land Court, established in 1862, converted communal Maori land ownership into individual titles, making it far easier to purchase and fragment tribal holdings. The treaty itself faded into obscurity. Courts ruled it had no legal standing. For most of the 20th century, it was treated as a historical curiosity, trotted out for ceremonial occasions, but otherwise ignored. That began to change in the 1970s. A new generation of Maori activists demanded that the treaty be honored. They marched on Parliament. They occupied land. They forced New Zealand to confront its founding document and ask what it actually meant. In 1975, the government established the Waitangi Tribunal, a permanent commission to investigate claims that the Crown had breached the treaty's principles. Initially, the tribunal could only examine grievances from 1975 onward. In 1985, its jurisdiction was extended back to 1840, opening the entire colonial record to scrutiny. More than 2,000 claims have been filed. The tribunal has issued reports on land confiscations, fishing rights, the Maori language, water rights, and dozens of other issues. Beginning in the 1990s, the government began negotiating settlements with iwi, Maori tribes, whose claims had been upheld. The Ngai Tahu settlement in 1998 involved $170 million and the return of significant lands in the South Island. The Waikato Tainui settlement addressed confiscations from the 1860s wars. Dozens of other settlements have followed, involving billions of dollars in total compensation. But the fundamental tension remains. What did the chiefs actually agree to in 1840? Did they cede sovereignty, or did they grant governance while retaining their own authority? The two versions of the treaty still say different things, and no settlement can fully resolve that contradiction. February 6th is now Waitangi Day, New Zealand's national holiday. It's a day of commemoration, but also a day of protest. At the Waitangi Treaty Grounds, where the original signing took place, politicians and Maori leaders gather each year for ceremonies that often become contentious. Protesters challenge the government's record on treaty obligations. Debates erupt over specific policies and historical grievances. It's an uncomfortable holiday, and that discomfort may be appropriate. The treaty is simultaneously New Zealand's founding document and an open wound. Both things are true. My sense is that what happened at Waitangi matters beyond New Zealand because it illustrates something about the nature of agreements across cultures. The British officials and missionaries at Waitangi weren't villains. Henry Williams wasn't trying to deceive the chiefs when he translated the treaty overnight. He was doing the best he could with limited time and imperfect vocabulary. Hobson wasn't plotting to steal a country through linguistic trickery. He genuinely believed he was offering a fair arrangement. And the Maori chiefs weren't fools. They debated the treaty vigorously. They asked hard questions. They extracted assurances. Many signed with reservations, and some refused to sign at all. They were sophisticated political actors making calculated decisions based on the information they had. Yet despite good faith on multiple sides, the outcome was dispossession. The gap between what was promised and what was delivered created grievances that have persisted across generations. The treaty that was supposed to establish partnership became evidence of betrayal. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein wrote that the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. At Waitangi, two worlds met, and their languages could not fully bridge the gap between them. The English word sovereignty and the Maori word kawanatanga pointed at different concepts, different assumptions about power and authority. Neither Williams nor the chiefs could fully grasp what the other meant because their frameworks were different. This doesn't excuse what followed. The land confiscations, the broken promises, the marginalization of Maori people, these were choices made by governments that could have acted differently. But it does help explain how an agreement made in apparent good faith could produce such lasting harm. I'm Richard Backus, and this is the Daily History Chronicle. Tomorrow, we'll explore another moment that shaped our world. Until then, consider this. How do we make agreements across genuine differences in understanding? What obligations do we have when we discover that a deal meant different things to different parties? And when the original terms can never be recovered, what does justice look like? Because that's what February 6th, 1840 teaches us, not just about the fragility of treaties, but about the weight of words we think we understand. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, then please tell a friend. I hope you will join me again tomorrow for more of our shared history.